So like it comes down to just we're trying to solve the issue of resilience for the grid and clean energy for the grid. And the way you do that is by having energy storage. So batteries are going to be a big part of that. Right now, in this current day, like 2025, it's tough. The last few years have been pretty brutal for electric vehicles, but we're trending there. I don't think it's going to be impossible. We're going to get there. It's just a matter of time and innovation. There's still a lot of work to do, and that's what gets me motivated, because when a problem's already solved, then it's like, okay, so what? But like, we still need to push the envelope.
What is the biggest problem in terms of energy, do you think?
I think the biggest thing, honestly, is that one,
So could you briefly introduce yourself?
yeah, sure. My name is Christian. So I am a Stanford graduated in 2019. I studied electrical engineering, also did a master's there, and I have been an engineer ever since.
Could you walk us through your career path again?
Yeah. So my career path, it's kind of an interesting story, but I've always been interested in just energy and things related to hard problems. And when I was young, I always liked building things. So I used to have a big Lego set. I used to kind of build things, take things apart, just understand how they worked. So for me, engineering made sense. And how I got interested in energy is I got a solar car, you know, those little toys when I was a little kid. And I thought it was really cool how there's no batteries involved. So you get this, energy from the sun. It's like the coolest thing ever. So that kind of started my journey into the energy space. And in college, I decided to do electrical engineering. So that field is pretty broad. And what I decided to do was start with hardware. So analog circuits, power electronics, very basic like double E things. And what I realized is after a few internships, I realized this is actually what I don't want to do. I'm kind of being stuck in a lab. And I also felt like circuits at that time was a very like old kind of field. So I decided to do a master's actually. And in the master's program, I took this one class about batteries. And at that time, this is maybe like 6 years ago, but EVs were like big, but they weren't like big as they are now. And I decided to take this class just to learn more about it. And as it turns out, this class kind of opened up a lot of doors for me, because it taught me about basically like batteries, battery management, how I could use like math essentially to optimize batteries, which are used everywhere nowadays. So did that for a little bit. I had a little bit of a story of like, oh, actually, maybe I want to do policy, energy policy. So I took a year off engineering to do energy policy in DC. And then after that, worked at Lucid Motors, luxury EV company. And then now I'm at a startup that works on battery swapping.
It's a really interesting story.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's a long story, but yeah, we got here somehow.
There's a vision that you are passionate about, that is the energy.
Yeah, that's right.
Then in the Lucid, how exactly you do in that part?
Yeah, I mean, so if you look at a car, a big component is how much energy or how much, miles do I have remaining, right? So my job was basically how to calculate that number for a battery. For a gas tank, it's really easy to do. They have like a bulb, and based on the density of the levels, it like detects essentially the amount of fuel remaining of the gas tank. But for a battery, you don't have that sensor because it's basically stored energy in lithium ions. So you have to use algorithms and different kind of methods to understand that. And of course, the battery too, there's safety things. You don't want it to overheat. You don't want to over discharge it. You don't want to overcharge it. So there's a lot of what we call battery management system things that we need to do, BMS. So that's what I worked on. Basically making sure the battery was managed properly and that we can get as much information from the battery as possible.
It's interesting. Then how did you start working in the electric vehicle industry?
So it's funny, like I'm not a big car person. Like I knew nothing about cars in college or even, now I am, but just like growing up, cars weren't really my thing. The reason why I got into EVs initially, it was because of batteries. Like, I wanted to do something in the energy space, and batteries at that time was an up-and-coming technology. And so I took this class at Stanford that kind of taught me more about the whole battery industry. And at least for me, what I was most interested in is you have these electric vehicles and we're trying to grow it, but how's that going to affect the grid? Like how are we going to manage the load? Is this an issue for the current energy system? And so that was my initial kind of interest in it. And then later I realized, okay, the battery is a big component of the EV. Let's focus on the actual technology behind it. So in my job search after the fellowship, I was looking at different companies in the energy industry. Tesla, Rivian, Lucid was definitely one of them. Lucid was the most appealing to me because I really liked their car design, and they had a really cool feat that they had achieved. I think they had like 500 miles range in like for one charge, which was unprecedented. So I wanted to work for a company that was like, pushing the edge, just innovation. And Tesla, they're a cool company, but I feel like they kind of like reached their peak almost. And Lucid was still like an up and coming brand name, and that's why I wanted to get into at least that company.
Then there's a lot of interest in EV market before, especially in the stock market,
Right.
because they invested in Lucid and Livian and Tesla, something like that, in
Sure.
the topic of EV market. So in your experience, not just for stock market, how do you think about EV market?
Well, it's right now in this current day, like 2025, it's tough market. The last few years have been pretty brutal for
That's right.
electric vehicles. I think people are realizing that there still are a lot of hurdles that need to be overcome for this to become mass market adopted. But we're trending there. I don't think it's going to be impossible. We're going to get there. It's just a matter of time and innovation. And so right now, I'm still in the EV space, and I very much believe in it. But I recognize, especially with charging and costs, like those are the main things that customers care about when they get an electric vehicle, right? Two of the most important things is like how much range do I have and can I charge quickly? Because they want, at the end of the day, the convenience of a gas car. And so our job as engineers in this space is to make sure that the technology that we're building gets to that point. It's what we call gas parity, gas car equivalent. And we're going to get there. We already are there depending on where you live. But for other places where you don't have developed charging infrastructure, or you still have like high cost materials, high electric vehicle costs, there's still a lot of work to do. And that's what gets me motivated, because when a problem's already solved, then it's like, okay, so what? But like, we still need to push the envelope in terms of battery design, electric vehicle optimization. And I think there's a lot of excitement that is still yet to be uncovered from this kind of work. So, right now it's a little bit, brutal. Like, I think startups right now, especially like hardware, electric vehicles, it's really tough to raise money and it's hard to make it. But I'm confident long term that, there's going to be a space for EVs everywhere, and that it's going to be a big part of the transportation sector.
Okay. Then, so what do you do for a living now then?
So right now, I work at a startup. We work on something called battery swapping. So I'm still in the battery space, electric vehicle space. You can think about it this way. When you go to a charging station, you have to sometimes wait in line for a charger. And then when you do charge, you have to wait an hour, 30 minutes, whatever it is, on top of that wait. For a battery swapping, essentially what it is you go to a station and a robot swaps out a battery for you right there and then. The idea is that it's quicker, it's more scalable, and it's less burdensome on the grid. Because when you do superchargers or like have this whole charging network, that adds a lot of like stress on the grid, especially when you do like high power output. But for battery swapping, you could charge at a very slow rate and then have like a consistent supply of batteries that are swapped out every once in a while. So yeah, that's kind of what I work on.
That's like future tech something.
Yeah, it's China, they have a big battery swapping market. Yeah, NEO is a big one, because in these like high density urban areas, it's hard to find chargers, especially chargers where you can just park for a long period of time. But with battery swapping, you can just, push cars in, swap them out really quickly, and it just makes sense for the grid. So in China, it's pretty popular, but they also have an infrastructure that makes it more amenable to have battery swapping.
Then what makes you passionate about the battery and energy, something like that?
Well, I think it's just, personally, I think it's gonna be fundamental for the grid. So like it comes down to just, we're trying to solve the issue of resilience for the grid and clean energy for the grid. And the way you do that is by having energy storage. So batteries are gonna be a big part of that. You think about like a solar panel, right? Like, sun won't always be shining. The wind won't always be blowing. So in the times that you don't have that, what do you have? Well, you have the energy stored from the battery that was charged from before. So a battery allows you to store or levelize the variable load that you might see at the solar level or wind level. And yeah, batteries are everywhere with like electronics, portables, even like home energy storage. It's going to be a big part of the future. So for me, that's what I get passionate about. Something that impacts society and something that solves a problem that is meaningful.
Then, in your experience, moving on from a large company, maybe Lucid is not a small company now, I think.
Yeah, they're big.
Yeah.
They're a big company now.
So
Yeah.
moving from a large company to a startup, did you have any concerns about like compensation?
I mean, honestly, like, I had an idea that when you go from a big company, a more stable job to a startup, you're inherently taking more risk. But luckily, that wasn't an issue. So, at least for a startup. So, but yeah, the thing with the startup always is like there's a lot of pressure for how much runway we have, how long will the company last with the revenue that we have right now. With Lucid, we had a lot of big investors that were going to put in money, the Saudis basically, but with my current company, there's always gonna be worries about can we get to the next fundraising stage and everything. But yeah, for me, compensation is also it's important, but there's more important things I think at this part of my career. It's about the growth, the ability to kind of learn as much as I can, and even just experience the startup scene because we're young, and I think we should take risks when we're younger because sooner or later that won't be as much of an opportunity anymore. So. Yeah.
I think you are so interested about the entry level of company,
Yeah.
not the big size of company.
Right. Yeah. I would agree.
That's special.
Yeah.
Because most of the students who graduated Ivy League or Stanford or UC, something like that, they want to get a big tech company and get a good compensation. So you're so special, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe it's just like a Stanford thing, but like I think people. I mean, I have friends that founding companies, and it's you can't be like make there's a certain level of money that you have to make, and just to make sure the company is lean and spending money efficiently. But I think it's normal. You in the city in SF, you find people that are finding every way to like be efficient about money and how they are compensated. But I'm of the mindset that like if you believe in something, you'll make it work, and so. If that means taking a pay cut, and still having to live out your dreams and fulfilling that passion, it's no brainer. There could be more things than just money. So at least right now when people are young and don't have families and stuff like that. So yeah.
Then, from your experience, what traits define someone who excels at work, do you think?
People who are good communicators. I think in any level, any profession, communication is everything. I think people who have a very strong vision, I think, for what they want. Like, they're not necessarily just going with the flow, kind of letting life kind of take them wherever they want. They have an active plan and they try their best to achieve it. So they're motivated. And I think also, if you're a good, empathetic person too, I think that goes a long way. I think people want to be around people that are good people. I think it's an attraction. And yeah, I think people who demonstrate empathy, they're good with other people and getting along with people and not being so overly selfish. I think people appreciate that because at the end of the day, you work with people. So, you can't do everything by yourself.
Then, when I think of someone who is working in startup in San Francisco, they are like work, and sleep. And work, and sleep, something like that. So how could you balance your work and life?
Well, I think, this is like a more personal personality thing, but I think people will be very like strong about like boundaries, but the reality is for some people maybe that's not something you can do. But for me personally, I will never sacrifice health for stuff I get for like other things. So I do my best to like stay active, stay fit whenever I can. But yes, I mean, sometimes you're really passionate about something and it has to come at the cost of something, and hopefully it works out. There's no guarantee, but if that's your story, that's your thing. But yeah, I think if you are intentional about how you spend your time, you set boundaries, then it's not much of a problem. I think if you care about something enough, then it's going to happen. If not, then that's the way it is. So
that's a good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the next chapter. So you have worked in the DC area. So what kind of work did you do in the DC?
Yeah, so I worked on energy policy for a little bit, and basically at that time I was just wondering, like, this is like around 6 years ago, so I was like 1 year into my master's, finishing up my master's actually, and I was thinking about like what I wanted to do long term. And I was like, maybe engineering, like it's been good. I've enjoyed it, but like I don't know if I want to do it like full time or even long term. So I took a law school class at Stanford called Energy Policy, and that's what kind of got me interested in this space, because I saw how, especially with the grid and electricity and energy, there's like definitely the technology side, which is very important, how we get our electricity. But then another component of that is the policies, the rules, the regulations that essentially give us electricity that we have today. It's a big part of it. And I was very fascinated by that at that time. So coming out of that class, I was like thinking, oh, maybe I should do something policy oriented just for a little bit. So at Stanford, there's something called the Schneider Fellowship. And basically they give you the opportunity to work at different non-governmental organizations, different policy issues. And I got to work at the Natural Resources Defense Council, NRDC. They're like a pretty big energy policy think tank. And they help basically advocate for clean clean energy legislation. And so for them, I was helping them out with a few different policy matters like hydrogen, electric vehicles. And my thing was just like, I wanted to bridge the gap between technology and policy because I thought there was a big gap between that. You know, a lot of like regulators, lawmakers, they don't really have the technical background. And at that time, I was thinking maybe there could be some use actually in bringing my experiences, my knowledge of engineering into the policy space. So I did that for a year in DC.
Then maybe there's a lot of problems and issues in terms of grid or energy in the USA.
Yeah.
So what is the biggest problem in terms of energy, do you think, in the US?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, honestly, is that one, a lot of people care about costs. So the way that you connect with people, I think, if you want to deliver a message is like, see what impacts them first, right? And the biggest complaint that Americans have with energy, or maybe not all of America, but at least here in California, is electricity is expensive. You know, it's like, why is my utility so expensive? Why are there blackouts? Like, it's not even reliable sometimes. So I think it's a fundamental issue of maybe like, energy prices have not gone up or not gone down at all. They've actually been going up. And if you look at a society and like how they're supposed to progress, usually goods and services should cheapen over time. But with electricity, actually, it's been the direct opposite in some areas. So I think fundamentally, at least that's one way of looking at it. It's like electricity is pretty expensive. It's unreliable. There's a whole thing about where our energy comes from too. Is it clean? You know, like carbon emissions and everything. So I think, that's kind of like the big overall picture. And then, I think what people at the end of the day will really care about is like, is it cheap? Is it going to make the air better? And is it reliable? Those are the big three things. The grid is unfortunately pretty old in America. So there's a lot of things that we need to do to fix that.
Then when I think that in this Trump's administration, they make WPI lower than before, but I know that they don't use any like new energy, something like wind or sunlight or something like that. So is that would be for long term? Is that a good policy? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I feel like the technology should just lead the way in terms of like what's most practical, what's more useful. I don't think we should necessarily subsidize energy sources that don't make any sense. But the fact of the matter is solar, wind, those costs have been going down. And sure, they were subsidized in the beginning, but now they're at the point where I think they make sense in a lot of different cases. But for me in particular, like it's not just going to be just one solution does everything, right? It has to be a mixture of different sources because each of these different energy sources have their own benefits, have their own cons as well. So when I look at the big picture, what I'd like to see is, you know, a good solid base of nuclear energy, which I feel like is clean. Some people might feel otherwise, safety issues, and that's fair, but I think if you want a stable baseload that's clean, affordable, and hopefully something that we'll have access to in the future, I think that makes a lot of sense. And then you have, you know, the typical batteries plus solar because you have a mixture of a variable energy source with a storage that can levelize the energy when the sun's not shining. So there's a bunch of different things there, but I feel like, you know, you basically optimize where you take the strengths of each energy source and you put them together, and hopefully you have a clean portfolio of energy that can make the grid more resilient.
Anyway, that is the goal of our generation, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. It's a big problem, and I think people are now starting to get more attuned to it. Because even with AI, right? Like the AI has to be powered by something. Where's the energy going to come from? Electric vehicles, right? That has to be like maintained properly. Batteries, like a lot of technical things in the details that will be important for us to solve to make this happen.
Okay, then in your experience in DC, what did you learn at that experience?
Ooh. Well, okay. I mean, I learned that energy policy is it can get very complicated, you know? And at the end of the day, I think it's actually about like telling a story and sharing it in a way to convince people to believe in it, like anything. Because when I was working there, our job was basically to convince lawmakers, like saying, hey, like we should pass this legislation or don't pass this legislation. And if not, like how we can improve it. But the way that you do that is you have to convince people and you have to play the game, you know, you have to like get people on your side, play alliances. And a lot of that I think is making sure that those interests of those people, understanding that and making sure that those are met in addition to like what you're trying to achieve. So it's a lot of politicking. And it makes sense because in DC, it's all about, it's all about who you know, really. It's like, you're not going to be the decision maker. You're trying to influence the decision maker. And the only way to do that is to be really smart about how you present your case.
Then, in your experience, what's the best career advice that you've listened?
Ooh, so I remember watching a video from Gary Tan. This is like maybe a few years ago, but he said like, when you're early in your career, you should either, or like when you think about like moving or like switching jobs, you should think about two things. Like, are you going to earn more or are you going to learn more? That kind of thing. And I think that's a pretty good heuristic of how to approach kind of the next step. Because, you want to kind of always grow, but it's also might not always be reflected financially too. There might be some opportunities out there for you where it's bigger risk, but the point is you're taking that risk so you can learn more and have more of the potential upside. Yeah, so I think that's one. And another one I've always heard that I'm also trying to practice myself is like, you have to kind of make it your own. Like no one's going to hand you something because you just sat around waiting for it. It's like you have to make it happen and think about the ways that, you can make it happen basically. So yeah, just like having a goal and just going for it. And that can mean, asking for help, asking for things, but that's part of life too.
Something like just do it.
You just got to do it, You just got to do it. Yeah.
Then when I heard your interview, I feel like you're so confident and you're so positive.
Yeah.
So what makes you confident and what makes you positive?
I mean, the confidence, I think if you truly care about something, you have conviction, you have passion for something, then I think the confidence naturally follows. And for positivity, I mean, that's just a personality thing. I think just growing up, I always, was a positive person. Genetics, maybe it's the environment I grew up in too. Like, my parents were great, good family dynamics and all that. But yeah, I mean, who knows, really? I think a lot of it's just like where I grew up, environment I grew up, and then just having that yearning to learn more and to understand things better. And like, yeah, truthfully, I might sound confident, but like, I don't know there's a lot of things about the grid I don't know, and like it's a lifelong journey. So, but yeah, there's a lot of things there that I think I need to kind of like discover for myself.
Okay, then I just want to ask to you, are you happy right now?
Yeah, I think I am. Like, I generally, I'm a constant kind of like baseline, I feel like, just positive person. Not always like that, of course, but like generally, I always think about it this way. It's like where I am at right now, it's like it's a true blessing and privilege to be where I'm at. And I really cannot be more grateful just for the opportunities I've been given in my life. And when I think about it like that, then a lot of the worries I think about, it's like really nothing. So I'd say I am content.
Okay, then I've finished all of my prepared questions. So could you have anything that you want to talk more?
I'll just say, hey, subscribe to the Grid Report. I'm on Instagram and then YouTube, Let's Grid. That's about it. I had to plug,
What kind of content do you create on there?
So I create informational content on the electric grid, the Grid Report. And the reason why I started it was because I felt like personally I had a lot to share about just our current energy infrastructure. I think personally people do care about it, but maybe they don't really have as much access to the information that they need to learn more about it. And so my thing is I want to take a complicated topic like the grid and make it more digestible for people to understand. Because I think people do care about it. Like when people go through a blackout, they can't, open the fridge or freezer because there's no energy. I think they feel that, this grid thing is pretty important. And then every month they see their utility bill, they have to be curious, okay, why am I getting charged this amount? Where's the energy coming from? And I think my goal is to basically bridge that gap. There's a gap between what people know about the grid and what the grid actually is. And I think that content is kind of like my way of my passion, but just also I hope to kind of, hopefully people learn too, I think is my main thing through this channel.
Okay, then let's finish our interview and thanks for Tiger again.
Yeah, and then shout out to Tiger for connecting us.
Yeah, from Cambridge.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Yushan.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.